Okay, I know spooky season is still like 4 months away, but this ain't no ghost tale. This is a real life story I have to tell you guys. If you believe in the paranormal, then you're probably not even gonna blink an eye at this story. But if you've never experienced it for yourself, you're probably gonna think I'm foolish. And that's fine. Believe it or not, hate it or love it, I got a story to tell you guys. As a matter of fact, I've got a few stories to tell you guys, but I'm gonna start with the one that's most recent here in Florida. I worked for this hotel third shift, and for a few nights of my first days there, I noticed a little girl playing in the lobby every night. She would only be there for about like 10 minutes, and it didn't take me long to realize that she was coming around the exact same time every night. So one night I decided to wait for her because, I love little kids. I love like little girls and stuff like that. So I was like, I'm interested on whose little girl this is. She couldn't have been any more than like maybe 5 to 8. And so I was like, I'm just curious to know whose child this is, and also like, talk to her and see what she's doing, play with her a little bit, that kind of stuff. So I decided to wait for her, and she came as expected. So when she walked in the lobby, I said, hey, what's your name? And she said Elizabeth, but they called me Liza. And I was like, oh, okay, nice to meet you. I told her my name. And then immediately, like almost cutting me off immediately, she says, have you seen my parents? So I'm like, oh my gosh, no. Like, did you just lose them? Do you know your room number? I can try to ring the room and see if they're in there. Possibly you guys just passed each other in the hotel. Mind you, the hotel was not very big. It was only about 80 rooms, if that. And it was a very small, old hotel. So she follows me to the desk and she tells me the room number, and I look it up in the system, and I'm realizing that it's the room to an older guy. This particular guy had complained so many times about his TV not working. It was to the point where the engineer was even frustrated. She said, if he says anything else to you guys, do not relay it to me. There's nothing wrong with his TV. But the guy's complaint was that no matter what he was watching, the TV would constantly switch back to PBS, which was a kids station. It could be, he would turn it to sports, and a couple of minutes in, it switches back. It could be a cooking channel. He would even have the TV off. He would cut on. He said he would walk into his room, and it's already on the same kid station. And I knew for a fact he was alone because he was a snowbird at the hotel. So when I got there, they had already told me he had been there a few weeks. He comes every year, and that he's alone. They said he's a very particular guy. He likes things a certain way, so if he complains a lot, don't get offended. Knowing that information, I'm like, are you sure that's the right room? And I look up from the computer, but she is gone. I looked around the lobby and then behind me, thinking maybe she had came behind the desk, but nothing, like she was gone. I also noticed the time, and the time was around the same time she always ran off. So that alone did not sit right with me. And I was on edge the rest of the shift until the sun came up and my coworker came in to relieve me and take over. So when he got there, I casually asked him, not trying to sound crazy or anything, but I was like, hey, do you know of a little girl staying at the hotel by the name of Elizabeth, and she goes by Liza with her family? And he was like, no, most people here don't bring their kids or have any young kids. I could understand why, because the vibe of the hotel was very different. It was set up to let loose and have a good time. There were several bars that was in the, like, some was in the lobby, some was in the resort, just randomly promoting you to drink. But because of the fact that the hotel for whatever reason was like losing its dedicated members that used to come, and it wasn't willing to, like, I don't know if the owners were not willing to like get with the times and modernize it, or if it would cost a lot to do that, or if they possibly would have had to tear it down. I'm not sure, and they might still do something with it, but all I know is that it used to be, like this really poppin' hotel, and all the bars were open, and now only one bar was open, and the music was still promoting you to have a good time, and the vibe was still that, but it was just empty most of the time, except for the routine people who came every year and a few people who booked online last minute, or because there was no other hotels that came as a last resort, and those people typically didn't even stay their whole stay in the rooms. So I just told him, I was like, yeah, I didn't think so. I was like, but some little girl was telling me she was lost, she couldn't find her parents, and then when I looked her up, her room wasn't the room she said, and then she just disappeared. And he was like, oh, it's probably some kids that were playing a joke. They probably ran off into the beach or whatever like that. And I didn't want to tell him that the little girl was actually a very tiny girl, and that there was no possible way that she could be outside by herself, because then that would lead me to also have to tell him that she came every night at the same time, and that it's kind of strange. And And being the new girl, mind you, I had only been there like 2 days at that time. I didn't want to come off as like, okay, weird. So when he said that, I just kind of like did a little laugh and agreed with him and was like, yeah, you're totally right. So that night for my shift, I decided to call in, which did kind of have, it made him have to work over through my shift as well. So I was wondering if he was gonna say anything about seeing like a little girl. And I know that was kind of wrong to call in. I did not know he was gonna have to do that, by the way. But no one else would take the shift. And that's their mismanagement. They literally didn't want to have enough people staffed. And I can understand why, because it was a strange hotel. And I think the reason why they hired me for the time period that they did was because they thought, well, she's working third shift. Most people are asleep and the people are not really going to talk to her much. And I was happy for that, because I know there were some very strange people that stayed there. However, I don't think they knew about the ghost. So when I got there, I relieved him and he left. And then another supervisor ended up coming in. He was doing something, printing off something or needing to do something. But anyways, I was happy to see him because I had only seen him one other time, and that was when I interviewed. And I remember he said he had been there for like 30 or 40 years. So I definitely was interested to ask a little bit about the property and to possibly make sense of the girl. But he was in a rush. And so I was like, hey, have you ever seen anything interesting around here? And he was like, interesting in this place doesn't go in the same sentence anymore. And I was like, yeah. Anyways, he leaves. I put my purse and my lunch for the night away, and then I turn on Netflix on my tablet. No more than 10 minutes into my movie, I heard the bell at the front desk ding, and I look on camera and it's the little girl. Hesitantly, I walked out to the front desk and I was like, hey, what happened to you the other night when I was trying to help you find your parents? Before I could finish my sentence, she asked the exact same question in the exact same tone. Have you seen my parents? I just kind of stood there and blinked for a second, and then I was like, where's your toys you usually play with? Because, honey, at this point, where is your parents? Something obviously is not right here, but I'm asking the questions now. He took them, she said, and then she just looked down at the ground. I'm like, who? So as I say who, I'm starting to also peep. She's wearing the exact same thing she was wearing the other night, and possibly the exact same thing I saw her in the video, except the video, it was really old. I guess it's called a CVS camera. I'm not even for sure, but the footage was a very old camera back there, so it didn't really pick up very well. You could see, but let's just say it was kind of like foggy, you know what I mean? So I really couldn't see like details of the outfit in the video when I was watching it in real life time, but I'm pretty sure it was the same outfit. So I was starting to get goosebumps, but before I could say anything else, a guest appeared from the pool area, and they was like, can I get towels, please? So I went and grabbed the towels, and when I brought them back, the little girl was gone. So I asked the guest, I was like, did you see which way the little girl went? So the guy was so drunk, he takes the towels, and he's like, no, I ain't seen any kids the whole time I've been here. I didn't even think kids were allowed. So that was that, and after that night, I didn't see her anymore. But like a month and a half after that, I had the chance to talk to the guy, the supervisor that had been there like 40-something years, and I told him exactly what had happened, because I was thinking about that every single night that I worked there, every single night I worked there after that. And so I was wanting to know, like, have you, like, do you, like, you know? He tells me like 20 or 30 years ago, there was a couple who had stayed there with their daughter. Although people did not normally stay there with their kids, they were at the bar all night drinking, and they allowed their little girl to play in the lobby. They were not paying any attention to her at all. A man walks up, takes her toys away, and lures her into his room. The parents are still drinking at the bar, unaware. And the room that he had took her to was the room that the old man was staying in that complained about his TV always going to the kids station. That was the room that guy was staying in when he lured her in there. By the time the parents realized that she was missing, they were like too drunk to recall like details. When was the last time they saw her in the lobby? They couldn't really remember what she was wearing, and they were really trying to prevent people from getting anyone involved. They wanted to try to handle it themselves for obvious reasons. They're drinking at the bar, and their daughter's been in the lobby for who knows how long. Video footage showed exactly what happened, showed the men taking the toys away, luring her in. It led them exactly to the room. where they found the little girl deceased, and the man had also offed himself. He said the parents was very irate at each other. They, in fact, did not leave the hotel together. They left separately back to their hometown. But the dad kept yelling, "She's still alive," and he sees her. Assuming that he was grief-stricken, the supervisor told me they just kind of like overlooked it and didn't think anything of it. After that happened, people from all over wanted to come to the hotel. Ghost hunters said that they felt a presence in the hotel, so the hotel changed its name, hoping to erase the tragic past, which worked because traces of it is no longer actually able to be found unless you really know the past history of the hotel to dig deep of past names. But some people still encounter ghost encounters, and so the reviews are messing up the people wanting to come and stay there, which is why the hotel is pretty empty. They do work overtime to try to delete the reviews so that they're not there, but they're it's just people, when they do come, they don't stay long, which I had already noticed that myself in the past month and a half I have been there. I said that most of the people that did actually stay were people who had been coming there for like over 40 something years. I don't know what kind of secret society that hotel had going on at one point. What in the, I don't even want to say, but very, very, very weird. Needless to say, I was shocked. So I took that information and kept it to myself because I didn't really know what to do with it until now. So now you guys know. I would share the hotel's name, but I do not want to be responsible for people bombarding the hotel with questions or reviews or calls or going up there. But it's not hard to find. This is in Florida, and so just look around for small hotels in Florida and maybe you'll find it. If you've ever had a ghost story, I'd love to hear it. I do have one more to share with you. This one takes place in my hometown. Very, very small country town, not very many people. When there is apartment complexes, they typically are just kind of like there, and then there's a big busy street, and the houses are mostly in the country. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the people that cannot afford to buy a house, they're going to live near busy streets. That does not mean that it's a busy city. It's just you're going to live in the busy areas on the bus lines, and just conveniently, I guess they feel if you're in an apartment, you're going to need the bus line type thing, but you're just going to live where it's busy. With that being said, we lived on this street that was extremely, extremely busy. It was called Dixie Highway, and they used to call it Dixie D-I-E Way because so many people got into car crashes, passed away, all kind of stuff like that. So there was this older lady who lived upstairs from me, and she was the sweetest lady ever. She was very nice, very kind, the kind of person that was always trying to offer you something. And she had a newborn grandson on the way. She was so happy this baby was coming. She was always going out somewhere to do something for it, buy something for it. So I used to always be so nervous for her. Her son, they didn't appreciate her at all. So they never came and picked her up and took her nowhere. And I used to always tell her, like, don't really walk on that street. It's dangerous. You had to be pretty fast sometimes to dodge those cars, and a lot of times people was texting on phones and just not paying attention. People have ran into those electrical poles and all kind of stuff, and with her being older and her reflexes is not as quick, I'm just thinking, oh man, please be careful. But anyways, one day I was just sitting outside on the little mini porch I had, and she comes up and she's just standing there, and I'm like, hey, and I said her name or whatever, but I'm like, it's hot, because I had just came outside to get a little air, but I'm like, you just walked somewhere and you're still just standing right there. I'm like, it's hot, why don't you go in? And she was like, I sure wish I could. So I was like, why can't you? Are you locked out or something? I was like, do you need help coming up the steps? And she didn't have nothing in her hand, she just had her purse. And she was just like, no, baby, I just sure wish I could. I was like, yes, ma'am. I was like, well, do you need me to bring you some water or something like that? And she was like, no, baby, I feel great. She was like, in fact, I feel better than I've ever felt, but I sure wish I had listened to what you said. Now, mind you, I don't know what I had said to her because we've always had talks, little mini conversations or whatever that would last like 15, 20 minutes. 30 minutes sometimes whenever we was in passing and stuff. So I was just kind of wondering, like, what did I say? But not wanting to sound like I don't remember our conversations, I did not ask her what did I say, but I found out what she probably meant. Because after me sitting outside for a little bit, I start sweating. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm about to go in, and I think you should go in too. And sure enough, probably 2 weeks went by. They was cleaning out her apartment, and I was like, what happened? And they was like, because I hadn't seen her. It's like, ever since that moment had happened, I didn't see her again. So I was already wondering, like, what was going on with her. And then they was like, she was hit. I was like, whoa, today? And they was like, no, about 2 weeks ago. So I'm guessing she couldn't go up the stairs to her apartment because she no longer could go through doors or turn knobs or something. Or is it like, I guess her spirit was just looking at her place one last time, and I guess what she listened to is to be careful on that street, which I'm sure she was careful. I'm sure it was not her fault. That street was just dangerous. And I mean, not I'm sure, I know it wasn't her fault. And I'm her kids who never took her to the store or anything like that, I'm wondering if they're able to sleep at night, because that bothered me, and I was not related to her at all. But yeah, I thought that was really weird. And I didn't even ask them exactly which day 2 weeks ago. I think because I was a little already freaked out, but I'm pretty sure it was that day.